I'm Dr. Carma Corcoran. I'm an enrolled citizen of the Chippewa Cree Nation. I'm a Native Hope Fellow, and I have a very special guest today that we're going to spend some time with. Thank you. Hello, my friend.
Hello, my dear.
I'm wondering if you would not mind introducing yourself and your tribal affiliations.
Yeah, sure. So my tribal affiliation is the St. Regis Mohawk tribe that is in Akwesasne, and we are Mohawk, which is the Eastern Doorkeepers of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy.
Wonderful. Well, and you and I met when I was researching programs that addressed incarceration, re-entry. So I had read a little bit about your story, and I'm wondering if you would be willing to share a little bit about your incarceration, how long you were in, where you were at, and if you feel comfortable, what you were charged with.
Sure. So I grew up in Akwesasne and living on a border and growing up on a border. I actually lived on an island called Goenoge. And on that island, any way to get off the island, you have to go through customs. And so it just kind of speaks to a little bit the political complexities geographically about where we are, but it'll make sense because living in this kind of high political environment also comes with a lot of law enforcement. Yeah, so when I was younger, I ended up bringing contraband, like tobacco, over with my mother. She was a single mother. She was trying to pay the bills. And I was trying to help out. So at a very young age, it was like, how do you make a lot of money in a very short period of time? And so getting caught up into that lifestyle, at a very young age, I started trafficking marijuana primarily. So at age 19, I get caught with the marijuana. I get I think it was some kind of class felony that I had pled to. And from there, I went to 5 years probation. And within that 5 years, I think I was like 2 weeks away from being done with my probation. And I ended up catching a second charge for burglary in the first degree, assault, mischief, and something else. But I ended up taking my case to trial. I fought what I was guilty of and what I wasn't guilty of, and also, you know, really had to take the accountability of someone being harmed, you know, and wanting that not to have happened, and then also not knowing how to make it right, or legally not being able to say anything at all, you know. And so with that, I got found guilty at my trial, and I was sentenced to 12.5 years in a maximum security prison.
Wow.
And I fought my case. I filed as a poor person and wrote to a lawyer. And the lawyer gave me some advice. I told him about my case, and he kind of showed me what needed to be done to file as a poor person and to request him to be my lawyer. And so he ended up taking my case, got me out of prison. And I've been home for the past 10 years, and I'm very proud of that because this year would have been the year that I was released from prison had I not won my case.
My goodness, that's amazing. So when you got out, what made you or what drew you to the work that you're doing now? And if you would share a little bit about that journey, I'd really appreciate it.
With the tiny homes? Yeah. So the journey with the tiny homes has been a really beautiful one because I needed a place to put my pain. And it was a great, innovative, creative way to start thinking about what I needed, what didn't I get, what needs weren't met. And coming home after I had won my appeal, there was 0 services for anybody. They had to like squeeze me into like services that like were just disabilities or something like that. And so I had to really start from scratch and not have any resource, no representation, nothing specific tailored to me or my kids or my family or my well-being. But thankfully, to mentorship and community and family, our traditional clan mother, Louise Wagilagutste, she's our Bear clan mother, she ended up meeting me in community and took me in and mentored me for the past 10 years. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so with that mentorship and with that access to community and youth and women who own businesses, they gave me jobs, they gave me space, they had people welcome me home, and that's when I got to the Welcome Home Circle.
Okay.
Because I was thinking about if someone were to question me about why am I where I'm at and why others aren't where they at, I would say that it was directly due to the response and me coming back into the community and being welcomed home and supported by the community. And I thought that made a huge difference in how I seen my value, my place, what I was responsible for. So in the spirit of that, Louise had welcomed me home ceremonially. They sang me a song, those women welcomed me home. And I took off with that and I went running and wanted to give that same gift to others who were coming home and to welcome them back. So that was just a deep desire, but I was working, trying to pay the bills. And with that came an opportunity to serve the community addressing sexual assault and domestic violence. And so I did that for about 5-6 years, and taking the experience of the violence that was specifically happening to women and children taught me a lot about the pulse in the community and where our families were at and where the dysfunction was really happening. So in these youth spaces, what I was witnessing was uncles not being there or fathers not showing up, or just this lack of male presence. And I could see the harm that it was doing because I'm listening to the mothers, I'm listening to the children, I'm listening to them. And I was also grieving the male presence in my own life.
Right.
So I'm very much like connected to what's happening in the community. I've experienced it myself. And so I kind of took this source of harm, which was primarily our men in the community, and thought if there's any way to really encourage transformation, you are most likely to be transformed in a state of vulnerability.
Right.
Right. And when are you vulnerable? You are vulnerable when you are in transition, when you are going from one place to the next.
Right.
Right. And so what I was trying to do was I was really trying to catch them when they were vulnerable and continue to feed that consciousness of coming out of prison, because having been released from prison myself, like I knew about the anxiety, I knew about the self-worth, I knew about how easy it would be to get in a relationship that was abusive, because I just came out of an abusive environment and all I know is power and control. So I'm either going to become the abuser or I'm going to continue to be abused. And I could simultaneously be either one of those in any given moment. So I was just really trying to, digest my prison experience, which is a whole novel in itself.
Yes.
But what I do want to uplift about the prison experience was the women and the camaraderie and the sisterhood. And I've gotten the best advice from the people who are locked up and punished and, mistreated. And so I just really wanted to represent them. I wanted them to know that I didn't forget about them. I wanted the world to know that the people that we were throwing away were the most valuable, insightful, compassionate people that really understood the power of accountability and also the power of, I would say, I don't want to say like companionship, but kind of like companionship, whether it was through a friendship or a sisterhood or an intimate relationship. It taught me that women were very much innate in creating those relationships. And so when somebody brought up violence earlier, there was violence in the prison, but it wasn't so much of the physical violence, right? It was a lot of like the intimate partner violence that was happening.
Well, and thinking about a couple things that you said and my own experience doing this work and being in community and people's questions, something I think that we need to do better at is to be thinking about these children. And certainly in my own life, and I look at the bulk of my nieces and nephews who grew up without their daddies, and for two reasons. Either their daddies were in prison, in and out of prison, or their daddies were dead because of a lot of drinking and driving, things like that. And most of those nieces and nephews now have young adults down to juveniles in the criminal justice system. Another thing too, I think we get pushback on is, are you serving the men or are you serving the women? And my argument has always been, if we're bringing healing to women, which we should be doing in our community, what's going to happen when the men get out? If they've had no healing services while they're in, if they don't have healing services when they're out? Is our community have any chance of being healed if we are not addressing all genders? And so I think sometimes we can get tied up, some people, in, well, this is what I do, but I don't have anything to do with the men.
Yeah. Well, what I had come to understand is that it was very strategic on behalf of the institution and governing bodies to rip our families apart. And so when our families are ripped apart, we're not strong, we're weak, we're dependent, there's all these things. And so when I seen like how our families are being like separated and how we're all being individualized, like I seen the importance of flipping the narrative.
Right.
And so instead of doing that, I thought, well, the best thing, if that's what the government was afraid of, if that's what the machine and the institution was afraid of, then that's exactly what we need to do.
Right.
That's how dangerous we need to be, is we really need to go back to be family, which is a very difficult task, because if we don't have the skills, or if we didn't have the upbringing or the environment to address conflict healthily or to communicate or any of those things, then we're also like not getting to where we want to be, and it can feel hopeless, you know?
Yeah.
And so, so I really wanted to service the family. And I seen that it was very evident that if you address the family as a whole, you know what I mean, they're much more likely to self-sustain. The other thing that I seen, Karma, was that when people were coming into our office at, where I was working with the sexual assault and domestic violence, we would remedy every single harm and trauma that came into our building with family. The prescription was family. So if someone came in grieving their son, we had younger men to go and sit with her, because maybe she needed to talk to a young man, or maybe she needed a sister because she has feelings about, or maybe she needs a dad, you know. So we became like a surrogate family. And what I seen time and time again was that people were felt as though their needs were met when there was some form of family approach to the situation. And it seemed to be effective, it seemed to meet the need, and it was beautiful to be able to slide into these spaces and be a sister.
Yeah.
You know, and it wasn't that complicated. It wasn't that like, I didn't need to be certified. I didn't need to, you know, a whole reference check. Like I was stepping up and, you know, and playing this family role. And I needed it myself. That was the other thing. I was also looking for family.
Right.
And so it was just a really good natural approach to addressing harm.
And it's an honor. You know, I remember the first time, you know, that a brother that means a lot to me, you know, called me a sister. And so I felt so honored that he thought of me in that way. I know he always prays for me. If I reach out to him, they have, you know, drum circle every week, and I'll say, you know, think about me and my family this week in prayer, and it's always sister. And we need that in our communities. So when you got out and you were doing this planning, did you have support from your tribal community with the Welcome Home, the Tiny Home Project? What did that look like?
Yeah, I really like to uplift my community. And I was really surprised because I was ready for pushback. I was ready for resistance. I was ready to be challenged. And my community is going to hold me accountable, right? And so there was a bit of that fear kind of lingering in. But when I actually started being more vocal and owning my carceral experience, along with being an advocate and weaving all of that in there, I think the community genuinely seen that there was a young woman who had come out and she was, trying to do the work, and she was trying to uplift a subject that nobody is talking about.
Right.
And so I was met with support. I was met with men that had donated $5. I was met with kids that had a parent incarcerated. So it became very clear that the community was also ready to have a place to put its pain, and they were also ready to change, which was very pivotal into creating anything, because the only way this was going to work is if the community not only bought in financially, but bought in consciously.
Absolutely. And something, as you know, in my work with general action theory, that it needs to come from within a community, that to address that need in a way that's meaningful for them, in a way that they can buy into, that they can support, that they feel a part of. And after all, it is whatever societal ill that's there. And certainly incarceration, there is not a Native community on these lands that incarceration is not an issue. And I think that's the other thing that really drew me to your work is the welcome home, because we have not been very good at it. And we need to do better, because if we don't, people don't find a way home. If we don't create that pathway for their journey and to be accepted, to have the ceremony of a song sung to us and physically, and it doesn't mean too that we don't hold them accountable, that we don't expect things of them being in community again, but we're all looking for acceptance by our own people. We're looking for family. We're looking for our cultural connection. So I was really drawn to that. So just a last question for you. Your project, which I'm so excited about with the tiny homes, where's that project currently at?
So currently we are moving homes on top of concrete slabs. And so working in community and having all this good advocacy, but I'm not a construction person. So it's been a journey, and I'm ready, I'm down for the ride, but we're building homes. And I think that that's really important. I think that it's pivotal, it's needed, it was needed a long time ago. But I thought if I could give somebody the best shot at transforming themselves, I could give them a safe place, a home. I could welcome them back. I can acknowledge their journey. I can encourage their children and their wives and their partners and their families, and to know that my family's been impacted. And so the goal of the tiny homes, or the Welcome Home Circle, is to generate a community council of directly and indirectly impacted community members who will then review applications from prisons to see who's going to go in which home, so that the community is constantly deciding what's happening.
Wonderful.
And so, and the funding was really important. We grassroots fundraised. We had a beautiful organization called Strong Roots that, helped us raise a lot of money. I think they put on they had put on a golf tournament for us,
Wow.
and we raised $101,000 at this golf tournament.
Oh my goodness, that's
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah, it's the most they had ever raised at this function, and I'm just so deeply grateful. And I really wanted to uplift the importance of business and community, because this specific charitable foundation was a collective of businesses that are in the community, owned by a family who thought it was really important to have outside businesses invest into this tournament so that it feeds back into the children of the community.
That's wonderful.
And they have a great working relationship like that. And so, I was really appreciative for them. But we did cheesecake drives, we did GoFundMe, I did change drives. And let me tell you, change drives, a change drive was really interesting, because as you're sitting there collecting change and everybody, we raised $2,000 in 3 hours by collecting dimes and nickels, and then people are like, I wish I had this when I came out of prison. And then you get to educate the community, and you get to tell them what you're about and what it's rooted in, and then they want to see you do good. And then word even got to one of the correctional facilities, and the Cayuga Correctional Facility, and I wanted to acknowledge those men in there, because when they heard about what we were trying to do, those men within the institution, they had sold coffee to make money for their own group, and they actually wrote us a check for $200 because they did a coffee sale within the men's prison to donate to the community work that was happening. And to me, that was probably one of the most biggest donations I could have ever gotten from people. That $200 is times 200 more.
Absolutely.
So I just, really wanted to uplift all the sources. But Columbia University, I was in a fellowship, they donated $5,000. So it was just really interesting to see how the money was coming in, but the construction piece has taken a little bit longer than I would have liked. But they say things that are slow to start will last longer. And so I really want this to live. I think sometimes things that are wanting to come to life pick the people that it needs to do that. And so oftentimes I very much feel something has chosen me to continue to go out there, advocate for those who don't have the ability to do that for themselves yet, and to let them know, like, we got this and we got each other. And I'm extremely confident in it, because I get to see time and time and time again our people show up, do the work, and figure it out. And that's why we are still here today, is our ability to think beyond the problem and to root ourselves in our children and in those coming faces that are yet to be birthed and born. And so I just, absolutely love and adore
the things. It's validating for the community, because too often communities get so much from the outside, and not that people shouldn't get things, whether it's coats or backpacks or whatever. But when a community is coming together to meet a need for their children, their families, it draws people together. And also the business aspect of, economic development in Indian country is highly needed. And I would argue that innovation is highly needed. And so looking to projects like yours, others that you and I have discussed, innovation is there, the talent is there. We just need to work harder to bring our people to those opportunities to do so. Well, sister, I love you so much. Thank you for spending some time with me. And I hold you up every day in prayer.
Thank you, my dear. I appreciate
you.
it.